Mike, welcome to B2B Content Strategist Podcast. It's great to have you here.
Thanks. It's good to be with you.
Yeah, well, I'm really looking forward to this conversation. So appreciate your time and looking forward to everything you've got to say. It would be great if you could just explain a little bit more in your own words in terms of, who you are and how you've got to where you are today.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me, Amy. I've known you for a long time. I think we talked about working together for a lot longer than we actually have worked together and are working together now. And it's been great working with you. And I was excited to be able to join this conversation today. So yeah, I am I'm head of marketing at a robotics company. Started off with a little laugh there because I kind of accidentally fell into marketing, which I've learned over time, meeting more marketers, going to trade shows, networking events and stuff. It seems like that seems to be the case with a lot of marketers. They almost kind of spill into it on accident, end up liking it, or feel like they have a good skill for it and stay with it. So that's certainly my story. I got into marketing a few years ago, went back to school, studied business, learned some facets of marketing, but I had a heavy project management background. Worked in the construction industry, industrial construction, doing project management, and the business owner had a small need for marketing. So I split some of my time for that company doing like in-house campaigns, some email campaigns, doing some digital ads, billboards, commercials. So I kind of got my toes wet, but I didn't really understand what it meant to like be a marketer. And I got an opportunity to join a company, an insurance company, which is about as fun as it sounds. And they needed someone with a heavy project management background because these very large, sophisticated campaigns can have a lot of moving parts, and you need someone to really kind of orchestrate that campaign. So I was like, well, this sounds fun. It's cool. I had just relocated to Houston and kind of jumped into it, and I absolutely loved it. And that's where I've been ever since. So right now, like I said, I work for ARIX Technologies, head of marketing. We're a robotics company, and we manufacture an inspection robot, primarily that serves the oil and gas and energy sector, and it performs an inspection on the pipe. A lot of the exterior pipes at these petrochemical facilities, just as an example, can be insulated to protect them from the elements, but because they corrode in nature. But oftentimes the corrosion can happen under the insulation. It's very expensive to inspect those. So our robot attaches to the outside of the insulation, goes up and down the pipe vertically, horizontally. It's the only robot that can go vertically in the world, which is kind of cool. And it scans for corrosion underneath the insulation. That's probably about as exciting as I can make it sound for someone who's not in the industry. But if you are in the industry and understand how hard it can be to inspect these pipes, it gets a lot cooler for you, as I have learned as I've been here for a year now. So
We first met each other when you were at your role before ARIX, but when you moved to ARIX and I looked at the website and, was looking at what ARIX does and things like that, it is really interesting. I got quite deep into learning about the robotics and the inspection. And when you told me more about it as well, it is really interesting. So yeah, must be cool to work there.
what's funny is so I've worked in construction now, hospitality, insurance, prepaid legal insurance, B2B SaaS, specifically HR tech. That was my previous role, and now robotics. And I get very different reactions telling people that I meet. They say, what do you do for work? And I say I work for a robotics company, and they're like, oh man, they think that's so cool. And I'm like, please don't look at me differently. I work in marketing. I'm not an engineer, or I'm not fancy like that. But yeah, it's very interesting to talk about, especially in the world of AI, especially, and as a general term, people kind of tie it, consider it one and the same with robotics, and it can be in a lot of ways. So yeah, it's cool. It's been a lot of fun.
Cool. And tell me a little bit more about your role and what does the team look like and what kind of things do you like to keep very much to in-house marketing? What kind of things do you prefer to outsource and work with specialists and suppliers and experts to provide from a marketing perspective?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'd probably yield different answers at different companies. I think depending on what you're selling, how technical the product is, how complicated it is, certain things can be outsourced, and then like what activities you're doing. So to be specific, I was the first marketing hire that Eric's had. Actually a year ago today. This is my,
Oh,
yeah,
congratulations.
yeah, thanks. I was the first marketing hire. We're a little bit of a smaller company. So a lot of the marketing activities were done in-house, engineers that had time to schedule some event stuff, local events and things of that nature. So when I came in, I kind of helped define the brand. Okay, like what is our core messaging? We need consistency. The website, I can't. It was like Wix or something. It was like an e-commerce, website. I was like, we got to get off this platform, transition to something else. And we built a better website. And this coming year is going to be very exciting because we're going to be expanding our budget and our team, which is awesome. And some of the things that we're looking specifically for our business model to keep in house are a lot of the internal coordination projects. So we do serve some internal customers and needs, almost similar to the way you'd work with like a bigger company where you're almost like an internal agency servicing sales, servicing events. Engineering has marketing needs from time to time, as surprising as that can sound. So keeping a lot of like, I think the project coordinator or almost administrative stuff, project management in-house, I think is really key. I don't think it matters what that role is called, right? Some people call it MOPS, like your marketing operations folks and things of that nature. Someone that can really understand and also bridge the gap between sales. I think that person ends up to, helping sales with what they need to move deals through the pipeline, bring new deals in, make sure that they have what they need to communicate and sell effectively, presentation decks and things of that nature. I think that's important to keep in house. And then I think a lot of the content that person's going to need to build the assets that are being requested of them. If you find a really strong agency that can get ingrained in your product, I think a lot of that can be outsourced. So for an example, content 10x did a great job taking a lot of the things that we had, learning it, listening very intentionally at the direction and the creative that we wanted it to hold, and then helping us kind of repurpose some things that we can use and build and insert into stuff. So I think content can be outsourced. We also have a writer that we outsource some things to. There was a big learning curve there, I will say, because it's a lot of technical writing and a lot of industry specific stuff. We tried to find a unicorn writer, and we would have considered that person full time or 1099 depending on what their needs were. But we literally realized we were looking for someone who didn't exist. It was so specific, robotic experience, but also has touched energy and or oil and gas, but then also understood the specific technology that the robot uses to scan. It's like, this person doesn't exist, right? So we found someone that is awesome to work with. She had some technical experience, a little bit in robotics, and had written a few pieces in oil and gas. And then we trained her up and, she was the right fit. So there was a little bit of a learning curve there, but when I worked in B2B SaaS HR tech, I could find writers all day long that in the HR space, so it's been interesting for at ARIX, looking at the different needs that we have to serve marketing and say, okay, what makes sense trying to bring in somebody full time for this role versus what can we keep outsourced without losing the quality of what we're doing.
Completely understand. Thank you for the kind words that you said about content tech. I quite really appreciate that. No, it makes sense. Like the first role that you mentioned as well, that you said kind of project management, internal marketing ops. It's kind of like a marketing business partner, isn't it? As well, somebody who's business partnering up to the different functions that require the needs of marketing and managing those demands and timelines and projects and relationships, which completely makes sense that you're going to build that function in-house. And in terms of what you focus on, so, well, robotics doesn't sound too traditional, does it? Robotics sounds very futuristic, but you're in a fairly traditional industry in terms of energy, as you mentioned, in terms of who you're working with and who you are selling the technology to. What do you focus on? Is there a temptation to go for shiny new objects when it comes to marketing approaches, or is it better to stick to the back to basics and more traditional marketing approaches in the energy industry to the people that obviously you are marketing to and your audience?
Yeah, I'm glad that we're talking about this. Transitioning over to ARIX, especially coming from SaaS, was almost like a punch in the face for me. It's a laggard industry, and I don't think that's not a secret. And I don't mean that as a derogatory sense either. It's just an industry that tends to lag behind a lot of. It's difficult to digitalize. It's hard to modernize. It's slow to adapt, and not because they don't want to, just because it's difficult. right? It's large scale, it's expensive. It's hard to sunset legacy processes and technologies at such a vast scale, and also one that's heavily regulated, So at the end of the day, though, I did realize we are still dealing with people. No matter where you are, you're selling to people, whether you're direct to consumer, you're selling to other businesses, you're usually talking to people, unless you're talking to a website chatbot or, which you never know these days either. But yeah, I learned that it is a little bit of an old school industry and that really loves and appreciates networking. And at first, I was like, wow, this can be a challenge, right? Because in a digital world, and I am a remote employee, I'm local to the Houston area, which is where our office is located, and where, if you know, is where a lot of energy and oil and gas companies are located. So there was an opportunity for me to get involved in in-person events, but I was like, wow, I mean, these folks still love their trade shows. They're more open to, I don't want to say cold calling, but they love phone conversations. They want to text. They don't even maybe love email so much. They love golf tournaments and fish fries and cook-offs, and I was like, "Wow, this is just such a different world." And, and I'm an extrovert, but when it comes to tried and true methods I've used in my, in previous roles, I was like, "Man, I'm gonna have to find a new playbook here?" So, we do as much stuff as we can in person, and we have as many face-to-face conversations as we can. We do a lot of lunch and learns that may kind of be a little foreign, especially in such a digital world, virtual world where everybody's sparse and located, around. But a lot of our prospects are in the Houston area or within driving distance. And we go up, we treat them to lunch, we bring the robot in, we show them. Now it's not easy to get that meeting, but once we do, the community talks too. I think that's important to remember, and I think that's kind of universal in nature. I think that goes across industries. People talk, people find services, vendors that they like, that they want to share with their friends, their colleagues, at trade shows or previous people that they've worked with, and people talk. So it's been nice. You said back to basics. It's been really nice getting back to like a back to basics, almost kind of like that pre-pandemic. But this industry never changed. It's always been like that. So that's been cool.
With the rise of so much AI generated content out there and people getting a little bit fed up of all the samey things that are coming out, and from a marketing perspective, it definitely feels in B2B like there's going to be way more of a move towards community building, people first approaches again. The Camino accusation that this is AI generated, because this is an event with people and humans shaking hands with each other and things like that. So it's really interesting because I was recording on my other podcast, the predictions episode, to go out at the start of the year. And, one of the things I was saying is I think there'll be marketing teams really trying to work out how can we build communities and how can we do more people focused and community building and face-to-face content and events, things like that, because it is becoming more of a thing, isn't it? And I think that's what businesses are leaning into. So it's really interesting that that's your approach. And like you said, that's actually always been the approach. It hasn't gone full circle. It's kind of stayed that way. So that's interesting.
Yeah, that's right. And I think too, just have a really, I know this is way easier said than done. Just have a really good product that people love. You know, they love, and they're, I don't want to say addicted, but they just love your product and they want to use it. I have a product like that. If I can mention it here, like there's a product called Airtable. I built a custom solution for us that does some fleet tracking in Airtable, and comparable solutions were going to cost us $1,500 a month, for robot fleet tracking designed for that. And I think an Airtable seat is like $20 a seat a month at the time of this recording, US dollars. And I was like, man, that's a no brainer. But I've used this product before in previous roles and I love it. It's so user friendly. And they don't spend any money on advertising. I don't see them anywhere. They don't have to. I heard about it by word of mouth. It's a good product. I'm addicted to it. And then once you get in there, you have this sense of kind of community that you can chat with folks very easily, or, they have tons of resources of it. You never feel like you're alone, almost like, working in HubSpot. They're almost like to help, where you're like, yeah, I'm fine. Just I'm good. You don't have to. But anyway, yeah, I think that's another key component.
It's kind of a dream if the product sells itself, isn't it, by how high quality it is. So yeah. So across your career, whether from ARIX or at any point throughout your career, what would you say is the most memorable marketing campaign that you have run? It's not necessarily the most successful, but to you, like the most memorable. And you know, why? What were the metrics that you were looking at, and what did you learn from it?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's not my most successful, and it's probably close to my biggest flop, but it's the most memorable because it was, if it wasn't my first one, it was one of my first marketing campaigns. So I spoke earlier about the transition I had made. I got hired as a person with strong project management background, and I came in and I was like, "Oh yeah, I know how to do marketing. It's an email campaign and it's a couple digital ads or whatever." And I had gotten brought on to manage a Father's Day campaign for this insurance company. And of course, it was a very reactive and non-proactive team, department, company, I guess, if we were all kind of reactive in nature together. And we started 6 months, 6 weeks out in advance, which is not enough time to run an effective campaign, especially in direct to consumer. You need a long runway to produce assets and come up with creative and to ideate and get, especially in insurance, and to get things approved to even be public facing sometimes can be 2 to 3 weeks long. So anyway, I was like, all right, cool. I got my paper. I brought all the department heads in, copywriting's here and creatives in, and I was like, all right, let's talk about, and they start throwing out all these things that I had never heard of, not just terminology, but like aspects of the campaign I wasn't even ready for, like the whole abandoned cart procedure and messaging and how that process goes. I was like, I'm like, I don't know, and it was at that moment I had a true understanding and respect for marketing and what it takes to run a successful campaign and all the things that go into a sophisticated and successful campaign. It's a lot. It's a lot. It's overwhelming. And to stay organized on time and not lose your creative edge and just push things over the line because they're due, it takes a really good team to do that. And it was at that moment that I realized I did get through it. I lost, the sense of being overwhelmed. We executed the campaign. It was not nearly as successful as we would have wanted, but we started a little late. But yeah, that was the most memorable for me because once I got situated in it, I had fun. We came up with like really fun creative and language and messaging for the campaign, and it all went out and we got some sales from it and it was good. But um, the fact I was able to get past that, realize I liked it instead of saying maybe this isn't for me, was a big moment in my life and career too. I don't had things shifted on that specific campaign, it could have changed the trajectory of where I am today. So
Yeah, that's a great answer. Fairly defining moment in your career. I really love the fact that you shared an example where actually it was the personal learning that's helped you on your career as opposed to, just that the campaign was really successful. Actually, it was really successful for you to kind of carve out your career further and learn from and understand more from it. So that's a really great example.
I will say it was the moment I realized I did not want to work in direct to consumer and I wanted to work in B2B.
Oh, really? Yeah, interesting.
E-commerce is hard. It's all hard in different ways.
Yeah, it is. Well, that's actually a great segue to my next question because I wanted to ask you about B2B and specifically the types of content that you like to create because, B2B tends to have specific types of content that organizations tend to lean on. And we've already talked about things like events and webinars, white papers, reports, things like that. What's the favorite type of content that you like to create that specifically you feel that you get a really good return from that content? So it's something that you can create and go on and maximize, repurpose, get more from than just the original piece.
Yeah, I'm slightly disappointed in myself for saying this answer because I didn't think it would be true, but it certainly is. Webinars work if you do them correctly. And when I say if you do them correctly, if they're on a good platform that works on mobile and desktop, I didn't think I'd say this either too, because I've run my own webinars like on Zoom webinars or whatever in the past. But if you do work with a partner that does webinars on your behalf and they have the right audience, it can be expensive to pay them to do it, But if like they're a trade show organization who also does publications and does webinar hosting and stuff, and they have the right audience and they host on your behalf, you've already jumped over the hurdle of like establishing credibility and getting an engaged audience. They've already done it for you. And then after that, if you can line up content for that specific audience, the job title or function or whatever that your business is selling to, specifically in B2B, if you're going to do a webinar, I watched it. There was a short form video that came across LinkedIn the other day, and it was like you should spend 90% of your time on a subject line for an email and 10% of the time on the body, right? Because if you can get them to open it, you've won the battle. Same thing with the first line before you click more on your LinkedIn post. Like that first line is everything. It should be one sentence, it should be short, and it should be irresistible. Like, people like, all right, I have to click it, Um, I think webinar titles should be the same way, right? And what motivates someone in a business setting? It's very different than what motivates somebody in a personal setting, right? Well, like if you're working in direct to consumer. In B2B, folks are under pressure to maintain budget. They're under pressure to maintain efficiency and productivity. They're under pressure to make sure their department is staying ahead of problems. They're being proactive, right? So like if you have like I'm speaking specifically about our product, improves safety, improves efficiency and productivity, and it's 70% cheaper than traditional means of doing inspections, and it can be 13 times faster. So if I can build that into a webinar title and just get them to register, right, and then deliver a really good presentation and quality. Wow them with the first slide, just like you would with the subject line of an email or something similar. Bring them in and give them a shocking statistic that they weren't aware of. And then you've got their attention. And then delight them, right? Give them a great presentation, make it worth their time, and make it short. Make it short. There's so much good content out there, but I can't log into another 3-hour podcast. I don't have time, right?
Absolutely. I love that answer. And yeah, it is all about the attention and then keeping the attention, isn't it? When you were talking about the title, so having that really powerful subject line for an email or really enticing title of a webinar to get people to come along to it, it got me to thinking about AI. Because I know on the show and on my other podcast as well, when we've been speaking a lot about AI, when I ask people about use cases, often the answer is we love to use it for things like that, for giving us lots of different ideas for titles and subject lines and that ideation side of things, rather than, creating content, but more giving us split test ideas for different types of subjects, things like that. So that leads me to ask you that same question in terms of when it comes to AI within marketing and content creation, what are your views? Are you leveraging it? And if so, what do you find it to be useful for at the moment?
I'm sending an AI a prompt every day.
Really?
Every day. Yeah. I will say this though, and I think I read this or saw this on a video recently. Every time you tap into a large language model base, they're reproducing something that has been done or has existed previously. Now they're getting slightly more sophisticated, and GPT-4 is applying logic now, as that wasn't always the case. And I think that will continue to be the case. But speaking current state today, I can scroll through my LinkedIn feed and see like immediately recognize that was generated by ChatGPT. It was a good prompt. It was a good prompt, right? 'Cause you see the arrows that show their bullets, and like it's just so easily recognizable. And I think what's starting to stand out a little bit better, unless you have a really good trained model, is that going back to just human writing is can just be as captivating now. Things are too long. Just like, I mentioned 3-hour podcast earlier. People don't have time to, it's not that they don't want to read your long post, and I'm sure it's really good, but it's too long. Um, so I think that teams that get too reliant on where AI is today, they're going to kind of fall into the masses of people are going to develop eyes for that type of content, and they're going to start to look over it, because they're not going to be interested in it, right? It's similar to, Google Ads. Like when Google Ads first came out, the first 3 search results, it was very highly likely that someone would click on it, right? But as time went on, the consumer got more sophisticated and they realized the blue links were advertisements and they scroll past it, right? Short form video does it too. Every third or fourth video, you're getting a sponsored ad, right? People know to scroll past it. It's not that it's not good content, it's just people aren't interested. I think that's going to be similar with AI generated content where it's at today. I can't emphasize that enough because I don't know where it's going to be in a year. It's going to be more advanced than it is today, but um, people want to talk to people. They want to follow people online. They want to hear from people's voice. They don't want to hear from the prompt, you know? So I think it will empower, I think it will make, I don't want to say non-lazy because that's not what I'm trying to say here. I use it every day. I think it will give true creative and innovative teams who want to be authentic and original a leg up on teams that are relying too heavily on LLMs to produce content for them. It will help them stand out better and be more effective and more powerful. I say that also you can leverage it to do a lot of the redundant things. I don't remember the last time I wrote an email to an external person outside of my company in which I needed to say the right thing, that I didn't feed it as long as it didn't have non-proprietary stuff in it or anything sensitive. Say, hey, clean this up and make sure it's professional for me, right? I can't tell you last time I didn't do that. It's so helpful in that. And sometimes, I don't want it to make me sound too smart either, right? I don't need it using words I don't use daily, but it's so helpful in that fashion, or brainstorming new concepts. I'm looking to do something, a campaign like this, what are some creative ideas? And I'll ask for 10. There's a couple in there that are probably really good. I'm like, okay, I didn't think of that. And the rest of them are cookie cutter, right? Okay. I knew that, So yeah, those are my thoughts.
I completely agree with you, completely. Yeah, usually when you get 10 or 20 ideas, there might just be one within the 20 that you think, oh, okay, and then not so much the other, but that's the beauty of it, isn't it? There might just be some idea spark that you didn't think of. So that's what we find to be really good as well. So it's a tradition on the B2B Content Strategies podcast that a previous guest asks the next guest a question. The question for you, it comes from Matt Crawford. He's the head of content at Next Insurance. So his question to you is,
the content marketing world has evolved a lot over the past 12 months. What channels do you think are going to be most important for growth for your company in the coming 12 months?
Short form video, specifically with LinkedIn's new push on, right? I don't know. There's a term, TikTokification of social media. All these platforms are doing everything they can to keep folks on, right? And which is smart. It's great. Before, 10, 15 years ago, you used to have to tell the platform what you're interested in, right? So you'd you'd say, I'm interested in this page or this group. And then it was like, oh, okay, Mike's interested in running, so we'll feed him. Now it's like, if I loop a video twice, the short form video platform, if I'm using LinkedIn in this example, it knows Mike's interested in that content. We're going to feed him some more. It's so different, right? Now that LinkedIn is doing that, and it's pretty good today. I mean, it's only been launched for less than 6 months, and it's already really good. And in the next 12 months, it's going to get even better. And what I'm hoping is that it's going to be able to channel industry sectors and functions, which is a little bit different than TikTok. TikTok doesn't really know what you do for work, but LinkedIn does, right? So, okay, if I'm putting out some content, short form content on this new feature in LinkedIn, am I going to be able to get that in front of the right person, And is it going to know that my content is related to this, but it's not really exactly that, but it's similar, That's what I'm really interested in. That's what I do want to focus on in the next 12 months, because I think it's going to be really big for B2B.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I was recently asked a similar question on a podcast. What do you think people should focus on B2B? And I said exactly the same. Short form vertical videos is going to get more industry specific. It's going to get you organically in front of the right people. And there's not a lot of great short form vertical videos at the moment, but it's where they're putting all of their time and attention. So you can stand out, basically, you can get a good reach very quickly. So agreed. So I'm turning it on you now. So final question of the episode is you asking a question. So imagine you're in a room of peers, heads of marketing, heads of content, and you got a chance to ask a question to just get an interesting perspective and view on something what would your question be?
Yeah, this is going to be a little hard to answer, and I apologize for whoever the recipient is. But I want to know if you could look into the future and make a prediction, whether it's 12 months from now or 5 or 10 years from now. What do you think the next short form video of today is going to be? So like email has lost its impact, long form video has lost its impact. All these things at work are slowly losing efficiency or attention, but everybody's on short form video right now. I want to know, what is the next thing? And not to lead into an answer, but maybe you can construct a question however you want. Maybe leave these tidbits off. Is it live? Are we going to make this curve back to live, or the way that people, I'm not a big gamer, but like Twitch, people really love watching people play video games. It always dumbfounded me, but there's an audience for it. Are people going to live stream what they're doing at work, and you're going to watch them doing their job at work? What is next? I just want to know, like, what is next, because this won't last forever. Our attention spans will get tired of it. It's human nature.
Oh yeah. Yeah, completely. I love the span as well, that we're going to say kind of 5 years or so, because the rate that things move is quite hard to predict. So I'm hoping for a super creative answer to the person who answers that question, because all we can do is, guess. I don't think 5 years ago we would have said that everyone was going to be immersed in these immersive vertical video experiences. So it will move on. We'll get fed up. We'll get bored. What will be the next thing? Love the question.
It's human nature. And just one more kind of quick note on it. If you follow Gary Vaynerchuk, he's got some great books and content. I love him. Everything he says is relevant, and he's usually pretty spot on. I'm curious, my question's specifically about B2B, but his big prediction for the future for direct to consumer, specifically e-commerce or shopping, is that this will be live shopping. So you'll go on TikTok, you'll see someone presenting something live, and you have an opportunity to buy it there, and they present something else, or they're trying it on for you, but it's like really quick, fast paced, like short form video is. Apparently this is really big in other countries right now too, but he's like all in on this. And I don't want to say he's always right, but he usually has a really good finger on the pulse of what's coming next, and that's his prediction for e-commerce. But B2B marketing is so different, and if we could predict the future, we'd all be doing it or trying to get ahead of it.
Like him or dislike him, it's pretty fair to say that Gary Vaynerchuk's usually pretty on point with the observations and what he thinks is coming down the line. So it's worth listening to what he's saying, that's for sure. Well, Mike, thank you so much for coming on to B2B Content Strategist. It's been a fantastic conversation. I'm sure that everyone who's listened in has really enjoyed it and taken a lot from it as well. So thank you for sharing so much and so much value. Would you like anyone to take any next step in terms of, I don't know, like connect with you on LinkedIn or anything like that?
Yeah, the only social media platform I use personally is LinkedIn. I do other things for work, of course, you have to. But yeah, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd love to have a conversation. And yeah, visit the website, submit a form if you're super interested in learning more about ARIX. Very specific product. Not everybody has a need for a pipe crawler at their house, but you never know.
You never know.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I've enjoyed it.
It's been great. So thank you so much. Really appreciate your time.